All right, we are live now. Welcome everyone. Hope you guys are having a wonderful snowy Sunday, as David says in the chat, or no, snowy Saturday. Whoopsie, I don't know what day it is apparently, but it's a beautiful day. That's what it is, because we're going to be talking about beauty, beauty and puzzles specifically. Beauty is a subjective thing, so it'll be interesting to discuss it in more of a in a subjective kind of way, something more subjective than, say, something we've discussed in the past, like difficulty or other things. I guess that's subjective too. So yes, we're just really just talking about a bunch of subjective. Anyways, let's get right into it. So we're going to be doing a little bit of a different format, as you can probably see by the screen. We have all these lovely gentlemen with us today, and we will start with Piatato, I want to say, Piatato,
Yeah.
and he will lead us off with his discussion of. He has quite a few points. I'm not sure what he's going to talk about. Let's see what's he.
Yeah. First, I thought you said that we should talk about beauty in a seductive way, but I think you said subjective. So
subjective, not seductive. No.
So,
we'll get to that later. That's yeah.
No. Yeah. So I want to actually talk first a little bit about different kinds of ratings for beauty, and then a bit of what I find beautiful in puzzles and how to make a beautiful puzzle somehow. So yeah, first I wanted to just mention how, for example, in Logic Masters Germany, there are these ratings which are very nice, average, what is it, not very nice, and not nice at all. And I think that it might be some cultural thing or something that, at least for me, I don't think very nice is all that spectacular of a compliment. I mean, it's usually what I tell my tiny piano students if it sounds like they've practiced a little bit the last week, you know. I mean, if someone has spent time just trying their best to make a nice puzzle and post it for everyone to enjoy for free, I think that's already very nice. So it's very hard for me to not rate things very nice. And I don't know, maybe it's different for Germans or something. I have no idea, but I think maybe if the rating descriptions were a bit different, it will probably have quite a big impact on how people rate as well. Because if you see on the Discord server, the ratings are good puzzle, great puzzle, and exceptional puzzle. And mostly you want to just rate in different spectrums of how much you like it anyway. So I think it's better to have like more better grades in terms of like how much you like something. Could probably lead to more nuances in ratings. Well, anyway, that's what I had to say about that. And then in terms of beauty, you know, I work normally as a piano teacher, and I try normally not to pick too much on my students' general skills, or like how, I mean, you cannot just wake up the next day and be much more talented, but you can wake up every day and try your best to work and to improve and to do what you can, to do the best you can. And that's also what you can comment on, that, okay, this week I don't think you worked all that well, you know, let's make a program for you to practice better next week. And I think this goes for puzzles as well, because we cannot, everyone cannot wake up every morning and just have the concept in their mind of some like literal or Peluta break-in or some extremely genius puzzle, and it won't, you know, happen every day that you find something extremely inspiring when you try to set something. And so I was thinking about maybe some way to still make puzzles quite beautiful, and that would be to kind of, as a setter, add a little meta puzzle in your setting process, and it could be something simple as just keep the symmetry in your clues, or have no clues inside of the grid if there are outside clues, or to yeah, stuff like that. So normal things like to not have any givens. Maybe sometimes a combination, or sometimes some of them would not work. So you can choose some of the others. I think just whenever you try to challenge yourself to make the setting process a bit harder, but to then add this other layer, that kind of shows that you have put a lot of work into setting the puzzle, and that you have tried to make something nice for the solver, and I think that usually shows, and I think most solvers appreciate when the puzzle looks nice, or when there is, yeah, when it just seems like the setter has had some pride in this process. And because I think we need to remember as well that most of all, the puzzle that we set for others to solve is not just some object that we can sit and look at, but it's a game that the solvers play, and it should be enjoyable. So, yeah. I think my time is almost up, maybe 1 more minute or something. So, but that was, I think, mostly what I was wanting to convey. Other than that, yeah, I'm not unsure I want to say a lot more yet, so I think I'm happy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Piatato, for your insightful comments. We don't have anyone weighing in yet. Is anyone gonna weigh in? I can weigh in on something. You said a lot of interesting things, like, for example, like the puzzle should be enjoyable. The puzzle, some puzzles are genius, whereas other puzzles are not at the same level as like a Glipperall amazing puzzle exactly. And then you also said that it shows that they put the effort in, or that the puzzle like looks better. And I don't know if how many of those things are synonymous with the beauty of the puzzle. Like, is the puzzle being enjoyable to solve the same as the puzzle being a beautiful puzzle? Is that the exact same thing? I would say maybe the elegance part of it is more in the beauty realm for me, rather than, like, I don't know, the flow. It depends what you like to solve, I suppose. So there's a lot of subjectivity that comes into it, right?
Definitely, yeah. Should I answer to any of this, or?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, if what I personally find very beautiful in puzzles is first and foremost actually related to, like, kind of the game aspect of it, that I really enjoy if some really accurate little, like, deduction or big deduction rewards me with some, like, progress, or with that I feel rewarded for doing some task. That's like that the setter has managed to find some piece of logic that can unfold a lot of progress. That always seems very beautiful and elegant, as you say. For me, it's, yeah.
Yeah. So another thing you mentioned was the description for each of the ratings, and what intrigued me about that is, like, what would this is an open question to everyone. What would be a description of, like, a good descriptor for a bad puzzle or a type of bad puzzle? Like, how could you convey to people, like, this puzzle is, I don't know, this puzzle requires bifurcation. Maybe that should be something that, or required bifurcation for me. That's be maybe a tag that you put. I don't know. Is that a good thing, or is that a bad thing? Does that make the puzzle less beautiful? What do you guys think? Go ahead, Tallcat.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting point that Piatato raised, and I hadn't even thought of it. The thing that I don't like about the comment, the beauty rating of the not nice, and the, it's just negative, and I think something a little more encouraging, like if you had a puzzle that wasn't particularly good, if you had something like maybe needs improvement, or something, you know, that's at least a little more encouraging rather than just like, well, this is crap, you know. That's one thing I've never really liked about the LMD ratings, is just that you have average and then you just have bad and very bad, which is just kind of harsh, you know.
Yeah, like going off that, like it's like a bad puzzle. Like, no, it's not. Like, you know, like I don't know, like saying bad. Yeah, I don't like that word. Like I do like what you said, Tallcat, with needs improvement. I didn't even think about that. I think that would be a really good, you know, step in the right direction where 1 out of 5 or 2 out of 5 could be like needs improvement, or like needs significant improvement or something. I don't know, but something, you know, that's not just like, you know, not good at all, or is not going to be productive. Like, but you know, I think the question was what qualifies that. So I might as well try to answer it. I would probably say something along the ends of, I don't know, something that's like kind of grindy, where like, you know, you have to try a lot of candidates, or you have to try different options. One thing that might frustrate me is like I don't know where to look. But you know, typically I don't find puzzles bad. I mean, you know, like I'll get the logic and then I'll be like, yeah, that was fine. But I think for me it usually comes with a difficulty where if a puzzle's like super difficult, and it's because that, you know, you gotta go crazy on like each and every digit, that's when it can get kind of maybe bad. But again, I mean, I wouldn't say bad. I would just say needs improvement, or you know, something along those lines. So yeah, I definitely don't like saying. I think it is not nice, and then not nice at all. I think those are the things. So I don't think it says bad, but still, I mean, like not nice at all. Like really, that's kind of harsh. Like I think it can be phrased better, in my opinion.
Definitely. Let's jump over to woofers, and I think that'll be the last comment. Sorry, Piatato.
Yeah, I do agree about, you know, changing the labels, but I would go a bit further than that and say, if you're giving some kind of feedback that's even slightly negative, I think it's useless for a setter if you're not explaining why you feel that way. So, like as a setter, if I'm receiving a negative rating, it's not really gonna teach me how to make a better puzzle in the future, and it's really just useless feedback unless I know why they thought that way. And Derek mentioned, you know, it could be because it's grindy. Maybe there was a step that caused me to bifurcate, but I think more constructive feedback in cases where there's a negative impression of a puzzle would go a lot further than negative ratings.
Definitely, yeah. I think we got some good points in there. We're gonna move on to Tallcat's speaker part, but we'll revisit some of those interesting points that Piato brought up. Go ahead, Tallcat.
All right, thanks, Meme. So yeah, I've as in traditional fashion, I'm kind of winging this a bit. I spent a fair amount of time thinking about this, and I guess a couple of points I want to make, and this is probably going to come up time and time again, and I've already seen it commented in the chat, but I think we can all agree that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and something that to me I perceive as a beautiful puzzle may be absolutely anathema to someone else. And I think one thing that's very clear in all this is there's a lot more subtleties to this than we might even think. So I mean, we can all agree as well that I think the beauty part of at least the LMD ratings has probably been something that has been discussed over and over again for various reasons. I don't know if it's a particularly good way of rating, but for me, when I think of beauty, there are a few things I think of. One is the nature of the puzzle itself. Like you can have a puzzle that is a very minimalist puzzle that can be very difficult and very hard to solve. but the fact that it's solvable, I think it is something in itself. As an example, I think of Glipperall's actually relatively easy, the little killer, where all the little killers sum to it. The sort of puzzle that makes you think, well, how can this exist? I think you can have beauty of puzzles that look fantastic, and they can be any level of difficulty. Something that just catches the eye, I think 2D wave particles would be a very good one. It's something that draws you in and intrigues you. I think that can be a beautiful puzzle. It can be finding new logic. That's one aspect of it, but it can also just be taking an existing logic and just connecting it brilliantly well together. Like you can have a puzzle that is relatively straightforward and approachable, that just connects. That is just you have a smile on your face as you're solving it the whole way through. I guess for me though, when I think about beauty and puzzles, I'm trying to get at more what are the hallmarks of a good puzzle for me. And I think, like, just as much as beauty, what makes a good puzzle can be very subjective. It can be very dependent on the solver. As an example, when it comes to puzzles, I'm not one for doing marathon solves. I'll rarely do marathon solves, but from discussions I've had with KNT, that's exactly the kind of puzzle he loves. So you can see very clearly that a puzzle that KNT would love that's much more of a marathon solve, I'm not going to like at all. But I think we can also agree that there might be some more generic or overlapping terms of what makes a good puzzle. And I think, things, when I think of that, things like, reasonable telegraphing, there's a clear path. It doesn't necessarily feel like you hit a brick wall. But again, that's going to depend on the level of difficulty of the puzzle. I think the hallmarks of what makes a good 1 or 2 star puzzle are going to be very different from what makes a good 4 or 5 star puzzle on top of that as well. And so, I mean, really, it almost feels like what makes a beautiful puzzle or what makes a good puzzle, it could almost be like a fool's errand trying to chase it, because everyone has their own likes and dislikes. So, I mean, that's kind of where I was landing up, is that it's really very hard to, I mean, I guess the rating system on LMD, where it's everyone who solves it has the opportunity, I think is as good as you might be able to get, because at least then it's more of a group think, you're polling all the people who solved it. But on the flip side, as we've talked about, I don't know if it's necessarily the most constructive. So that's kind of what I wanted to throw out there for discussion. So I'm happy to leave it at there, and I'm certainly interested in what everyone else has to say.
All right, thank you, Tallcat. Does anyone want to weigh in first? All right, well, I'll weigh in first, I guess. I just want to comment on the last thing that you said, because I think it's quite interesting to talk about polling the people who solved it. We've talked about this a couple of times on this channel, but it's a definitely interesting discussion. I'd love to get your guys' opinion, because you're polling the people who solved it. So you're only polling the people who looked at the puzzle and said, I want to solve this thing, which happens to create a vacuum where people get like boosted ratings because there are certain people who solve certain puzzles, and then those puzzles appear to be more beautifully rated, but aren't any more beautiful than other puzzles. What do you guys think about that? Go ahead, Piatato.
Yeah, I mean, my latest 2 puzzles have got 100% ratings, and they've definitely been much more inaccessible than everything else I've ever said. So definitely only the people who really wants to solve those went ahead and tried them, I think. So, but yeah, so I think usually when you set something that more people will try, you'll get a higher chance of people not appreciating it so much. Definitely, I agree.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah.
You have to unmute first, Andrew.
Yeah, I did. So one of the things I've often wondered is what makes someone choose to solve or not solve a particular puzzle. So I think it would be useful if there was some way you could, as a setter, um, have some way for the solvers who are looking at your puzzle to inform you, okay, I didn't try this because it looks too scary, or it looks there are too many rules. I couldn't understand the rules. The grid looks too messy. Whatever the case may be, I think it might be useful for setters to be able to have some of that type of feedback. And but people aren't going to spend a lot of time as a solver. You're probably not going to spend a lot of time, going through all puzzles and giving that feedback. So you kind of have to ask for it. But I don't know if there's a really good way to do that. But that is kind of information that would be useful, I think, in some cases.
I definitely agree. If that was a more accessible method of giving feedback, that would be incredibly helpful to the community. Tallcat, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw in the chat, Robert actually brought up a very good point as well, that is about other ratings for the setter or the solver. And I think that's also another factor we don't necessarily consider, is that there are setters out there who I think people may naturally give a higher rating for just on the name of the setter. So that is another way, I think, in which I guess in the same way that, as we talked about with difficulty, that sometimes people can judge the difficulty based on the setter. It's very plausible that that the beauty or the how good the puzzle is going to be dependent on the name of the setter too, which is another factor we have to consider.
I think Robert's point might also be like, is the beauty rating for the potential solvers, like so that they can choose which one they want to solve, or is it for the setter to be proud of the thing they made or to judge the thing they made in that way? I'm not sure if that was what he was saying, or yeah. But does anyone have any thoughts on that? Because that is a really interesting question. Like, who is this number that we're assigning to puzzles? Who is that for? Is that for feedback, or go ahead, Derektionary?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both, right? I mean, why doesn't it have to, it doesn't have to be just one of them? Because if I'm trying to solve a puzzle, first off, I might not have a ton of time, so I look for not super hard puzzles. But I look at the beauty rating, right? I probably don't think that but maybe I subconsciously don't do one if it's low or something, but not really. I mean, because low, there is definitely a correlation when it comes to beauty rating and difficulty. I mean, there is. You can probably come up with some 4 stars that are pretty low or something in beauty, but there's definitely a different, the more difficult it is, the higher it gets rated. And that might, be because it was a really nice puzzle, or it had some really interesting logic. And with 1-star puzzles, people might be like, well, this was super easy to do, so it wasn't like really nice. And so typically some of those 1 or 2 stars might get rated lower, and it's very rare to see some 2 stars rated high or even 1 stars rated high, but they are out there. But I mean, I would say that I look at the percentage as a solver and as a setter. I mean, if one of my puzzles would dip somewhat low, whatever low might mean for you, I'll take that into account, and I'll probably be like, yeah, I know why. Like I probably published it, and I was like, yeah, I thought that step was kind of weird. Or if I'm solving and I see some ones in the 80s or 90s or 70s, I really, personally, I really don't care. I'll go off of the difficulty rating, because for me it'll be a time constraint thing. So it could be 70% 1-star, and I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Let's just, bash this out. I can do it. I don't care. I have some time. But some solvers might definitely look at that more than me.
Right. Yeah. We'll go to Kagi Show and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I just I wanted to say that it's an interesting point actually, who it is meant for. Because I think that I will just say, I think that if you're solving a very difficult puzzle that takes you a very long time to solve, and let's say you manage to solve it, it's most people kind of, I mean, just inherently, most people have a hard time stomaching the idea that they just wasted their time solving a puzzle that they didn't like. So that alone is going to inflate the ratings of exceptionally difficult puzzles, because people will convince themselves, like, oh yes, that was worth my time. That's just how people are. That's just sunk cost fallacy. They do that. And I don't know. It's interesting. I just think there's a lot more to a puzzle than just, it's when it's being encapsulated in this single number, this idea of like beauty. It's you're really missing there's a lot of information that is just not being conveyed by that number. That is, I think, important to actually know what you're getting into as a solver, know what the setter was trying to do, or what other solvers have experienced in their solve. So I just think there's a lot more nuance to it, like Tallcat said.
Absolutely, and we'll get into all that. It is the end of that discussion for now, but we will move on to Woofers. He has the floor to discuss what he wants to discuss. Go ahead, Woofers.
Yeah, so the thing I wanted to bring up kind of, and the argument I want to make, is that we really don't need ratings to exist on LMD or really anywhere. So just to start out, in my opinion, a beautiful puzzle, it provides solvers with an experience that they enjoy. But the actual experience of solving a puzzle can be very subjective and vary from person to person based on their preferences, or maybe just how the solve happened to go. Some puzzles are made for a much more niche audience, like the marathon solves that Tallcat mentioned earlier. Others are much more broadly enjoyable. Gas, I think, is a great example where hundreds of people solve and enjoy those puzzles every day. And yeah, everyone's solve happens to be different, because you might see a certain step right away, but then some other solver might get really stuck when they're solving a puzzle. And that could just be a matter of luck. They just happen to not be thinking about a certain step in a certain way. So because of that, rating systems, they have a lot of flaws. You have, this very subjective experience, but you also have different people rating differently. Often the rating will be influenced by who actually solves it. And then people who don't even solve the puzzle, they don't get to rate it. So you get this kind of survivorship bias effect going on. And also just a matter of like a puzzle's rating is influenced by this population of people who happen to solve it. So just inherently, there's a problem with this number, and it doesn't really reflect reality a lot of the time. And then there's this other question of like, who are ratings actually for, and what purpose are they providing? So when it comes to what benefit do ratings bring to setters, I would argue that ratings are often more harmful than good for setters. So if you're receiving negative feedback, then that feedback can often just be discouraging without really providing anything constructive to you. You might receive a negative rating, and I've seen some setters do this where it's their first puzzle and they end up deactivating it, or talking about like maybe they were proud of it before and then they see this negative rating and they're no longer proud of it. So I've seen that negative effect happen with ratings. And then with positive ratings, like as a setter personally, I get a lot more kind of joy out of seeing a comment from somebody talking about how much they enjoyed a puzzle versus just a rating. And I think what often happens is people feel like they can just leave a rating and maybe they're not as encouraged to provide any other type of feedback. So maybe if ratings didn't exist, people would be more encouraged to provide comments. I'm not actually sure if that would be the case, but that's possible, I think. And then for solvers, I think ratings do serve an important purpose, which is discovering puzzles. So LMD has over 15,000 puzzles. A lot of them are like there's a lot of them that were even before 2020. There's a tag system for genres, but even within those tags, you want to find what are the best puzzles. And so what I think people often do is either filter on rating or just sort by the best ones and then try to find puzzles that way. So if ratings didn't exist, how do we actually find puzzles without ratings? And in my opinion, this can be done more with recommendations and kind of getting to know other people who have similar tastes in puzzles as you and sending puzzles to each other. So I think that kind of relates once again to the thing that Tallcat was mentioning, like the marathon solve preferences. Like Tallcat might not enjoy marathon solves, but then that's something that I personally really enjoy. So if I see like KNT leave a comment on a puzzle that says this is really fantastic, then I'm going to be much more likely to solve it. And maybe I could ask KNT for recommendations for puzzles of this style. And then we also have this forum of Sudoku recommendations and other recommendations in the CTC community server. And so in there, I think is often a good place to find puzzles that, as they're released, or old ones that people feel are missed. And I think those types of forums are really positive, and it would be good to see more of that kind of thing. Basically recommending puzzles to each other rather than relying on ratings for people to find puzzles on their own. That's pretty much all I had to say. I'm looking forward to hear what you all have to say, not just about this, but also just what your perception of beauty is. So, yeah.
All right, let's take it over. Thank you, Woofer. Let's take it over to Tallcat.
Yeah, it's interesting what Woofer said about how ratings, his perception is that ratings can be of more harm than help to setters, and I wanted to share just briefly. So I had made an attempt at doing a 2-star puzzle, and I put it on LMD, and it got rated pretty quickly. And I remember I opened it up, and I actually was talking to Derektionary about this. And I think it had got rated at 81% when it was first rated. And my immediate reaction was, holy crap, and I deactivated it. And that's just because, of course, in my head, it's just so ingrained that, oh, anything above 90%, anything below 90% is terrible. And I was talking to Derektionary, had solved it, and he said, oh, I went to rate it and you'd taken it off. And I was like, it was just this shock of like, oh my God, an 81% rating. And he was like, oh, it's a 2-star puzzle. Lots of people are going to solve it. I wouldn't worry about it. So he persuaded me to put it back up, and I did. And, and it isn't one of my best puzzles, and I think the rating it ended up at was pretty fair, but I just wanted to cite that as an example of how just seeing this arbitrary number could be perceived as being harmful, I think, in that way, because it made me want to deactivate the puzzle.
Definitely. I definitely have similar experiences. Go over to Kagisho.
Well, I was going to talk about something else. I'll try to be quick. I need to talk fast. But speaking on what Tallcat just said, I've had a similar experience. I published a puzzle not long after I started setting, and I remember seeing the rating. It was supposed to be a pretty easy puzzle. I remember seeing the rating. It was like jarring. It was jarring, and I did deactivate it. It's still deactivated. So I definitely think there's something to be said for the kind of negative experience you can have when the entire idea of a rating is sort of like you're seeking validation, and when your valid, sense of validation is coming from a singular number that is sometimes just totally lacking context, it isn't always the healthiest thing. And then I also wanted to touch on what Woofer said about how comments to him are much more meaningful. Because I would tend to agree, even on puzzles where I have, say I've published a puzzle and it has a really high rating, but like no comments or one comment, and it's got 10 ratings, it's fully rated and everything. It does kind of feel almost like people are like just going through the motions. You just give it a rating because that's what you do. You give puzzles ratings when you're done, and it's definitely more meaningful, both in terms of feedback and just makes me feel like people are taking time to give the feedback when I get comments on puzzles. So it's interesting. There are definitely highly rated puzzles out there that don't have really a lot of comments, and I'm never really sure what to make of that as a setter. So
Definitely.
that's my two cents.
Thank you. Moving on to Derektionary.
Yeah, so just to comment about that, how it might be harmful to setters. Yeah, I definitely agree, Wolfer. I mean, I have my lowest one's at like 67 right now. It's super long ago, and it's staying there. I wanted to deactivate it, but then I realized I published my 100th puzzle, and I was like, this is my 100th puzzle, so I can't deactivate it because then my 100th would be my 99th now. So it's done. I can't. I have to keep it, so I'm keeping it. It's all good. That one, I mean, I published 2 in one day. All right, I was just starting off. People don't like that. Who cares? But most of mine are like 88s or something, and like I don't care. I mean, it's fine. I set what relatively easy ones, and I know some people like a more challenge. How difficulty is correlated with beauty in that sense. But I also wanted to talk about what people would change to, because a lot of people were talking in the chat about like what it should change to if there are no ratings. And in my opinion, just kind of throwing it out there, maybe just like a thumbs up, thumbs down kind of thing. I really don't think a bunch of puzzles would get a ton of thumbs downs, or at least ones that would dominate thumbs up. So I think that just, click thumbs up if you like it, click thumbs down if you didn't. I think that would be better. But the unfortunate thing is people like setters, and I do think it is setters. I think setters want to see that percentage. I think setters want to see it say 99 and be super happy about it, And if they just see a bunch of likes, I mean, I could see an 85 getting a bunch of likes, and like 1 dislike. And I could see a 99 getting a bunch of likes and 1 dislike. And so there's no way to differentiate them anymore. And that might be a bit of a bummer to someone who wants to set, 95 plus puzzles. And so I do think that there's a bit of an issue there that people might not like generic non-percentages because they love seeing 98s and 99s, and it makes them feel good. So yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind. If ratings do vanish, which I do agree with Wolfer. I think they should. People need to keep that in mind that you won't get super sad, but then you also won't get super happy. So that's something to think about as well.
All right, thank you, Direction, for those comments. We'll move on to Piatato, and then that'll close off that part of that. Last speaker.
Yeah, I think that also that comments are much more valuable than the ratings, and 2 points to that. One is that it brings some nuance, because the rating, it doesn't show like the history of the rating of the puzzle, right? So sometimes most people might have really loved the puzzle, but one person didn't get some logic and bifurcated through and just rated it 2 out of 5. And but then you can see in the comments that some people thought it was great. And it happened to me, like my 3rd last puzzle, I think. And probably, I think one puzzle today was 95% this morning. Yeah, not mine, but someone else's, and then in the evening, two solves later, it was 88. So I mean, it can happen that one person completely ruins a rating, and then it's there's no nuance to it. You just see the rating. Also, when you actually set a puzzle which has some serious flaws to it, it can be nice to have people comment so that you know what you did wrong. I set one puzzle once, it is now deactivated. It was a killer, it was a killer X Sudoku. And I thought it was really beautiful because I managed to make every deduction have something to do with the number 15. But the last one was, I mean, all the deductions became increasingly unfair and horrible. And in the end, the last deduction was a really horrible chain that few people found, and most people just bifurcated. And it was just bad puzzle. But then I learned a lot from that. I think my puzzles after that has all been extremely much better. So it was really useful that people wrote about what they felt and what was the problem and so on, so that I could learn something from it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm muted. Anyways, I was gonna say to the stream that it would be nice if there was some display to show how many comments there are on a puzzle so that you get an idea of the comments as well as the rating. Anyways, moving on to Andrew, you have the floor.
Yeah, so I'll start off just saying I agree with the idea of displaying the number of comments would be useful. As a setter, I definitely do find the comments more useful feedback than just somebody giving it a rating. So but the percentage, I think the reason most people look at the percentage is because there's a feeling that if you get a low rated puzzle, it's going to discourage other people from looking at it or trying to solve it. Like if you go look and you see a puzzle, oh, that puzzle's only rated 75%. You know, a lot of solvers probably will skip past it and say, okay, well, I'm going to trust that the people who rated it low had a good reason for disliking it. So I think that's why, as setters, a lot of us get discouraged when we see some of our puzzles get rated low. But I've had, a puzzle recently that I thought, was really, really nice. The people that did comment on it left some really nice comments, but then a couple of people notorious for low ratings happened to solve it, and it debuted at like 77% or something like that. And then after that, I don't think I got any further solves. So I think there is maybe some truth to that low ratings kind of discourage future solves. But I'm not sure that's a easy thing to fix. I know there's a lot of people who've said, okay, the LMD rating system is broken, and they have ideas for how it could be made much better. But at the same time, I think a lot of the people who have a lot of highly rated puzzles, might feel disenfranchised if you say, okay, we're going to change the rating, and we're not going to, you have like 12 puzzles that are 100%, but we're going to do away with that type of rating. Some other people might prefer a different rating system, but then you're not going to be able to find a rating system that makes everybody happy. So I think at some point you just have to accept that. But going back to what makes a puzzle beautiful, there's several, there's the visual beauty, the aesthetics, but then I think a lot of people, when they're talking about a puzzle being beautiful, we're really talking about the beauty and the deductions. Deductions that maybe are a little tricky to spot, but once you spot them, in hindsight, they seem inevitable, and they, really reward the solver for making that deduction. So that's one of the things I'm interested also in in people's thoughts on what kind of rule sets, or especially novel rule sets. I set a lot of puzzles with novel rule sets, and some of them, get a lot of nice comments. People leave a lot of feedback about how this was like really brilliant puzzle, but then a lot of other people at the same time are afraid to try the puzzle because it maybe seems very difficult. Whereas I think there's certain other setters explore a lot of novel rule sets, and they get a lot of attention. Like a good example is like the marble run by Zagreus. And I think what makes a rule set like that attractive to people is that you can instantly look at the grid and you can see some deductions you can make right off the bat. You can say, oh, I see the marble has to go through these cages. Excuse me, I'm getting a little dry mouth here. But anyways, I guess like one of the things I would like to know is when you look at a novel rule set, what makes somebody say, oh, I need to try that. I want to try that. And I have my own, thoughts on that, but I like to hear what other people think about what makes a rule set attractive.
Yeah, so Maverick, do you have any thoughts on that? Maverick, I can't hear you right now. Can the rest of your audio was working before? I'm not sure.
Doesn't look like he's connected to audio on Discord.
Okay, we'll go with Derektionary, and then we'll come back to Maverick if we can get his audio to work.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I definitely agree with Andrewsarchus about how novel rule sets can make something beautiful. That's part of what I'm gonna talk about during my time, and so I would say something because there is there's kind of a catch. Like, you don't want it to be a super long rule set, like a super complicated rule set where all these twists and turns and stuff, and you have even like a 4-star puzzle could have a really unique rule set, but based on how the rules are phrased or what the rule is, it can be very standoffish for someone who wants to solve it. So my advice would be doing a novel rule set, but making it kind of like an introductory to that novel rule set, where you have a 2 or 3 star. I mean, that's my field is 2 or 3 stars. So like where you have like a 2 or 3 star puzzle where you're just kind of getting used to the rule set, and you can see maybe not all of the cool logical steps of it, but maybe some of them, like some of the key ones, like global entropy or something, right? Like that comes up, and that has some really interesting logic to it. Or the marble run, as you said, it was very cool, and it debuted difficulty wise as 3 stars, maybe 2 stars. So I mean that would be my advice if you're looking for any novel rule sets, to do something that, like, you don't have to show all of the cool logic that it has. Maybe in the next edition you can, but in the first edition, make it something that's approachable.
Thank you, Derek. That's some great advice for people looking to set novel rule sets for sure. But let's try Maverick's mic again, and then... No, we still can't hear you, Mav. Maybe go into the settings and try to do test microphone stuff, or maybe try leaving the call and coming back, if that might work. Piatato, we'll go to you and come back to Maverick.
Yeah, I think that for me at least, that's quite important that the rule set is quite elegant and I mean easy, or I mean that either is quite easy to understand, short and simple, and kind of makes sense to me, or if not, it should at least have some kind of elements that make sense to me and that I know from before, so that I won't be completely just paranoid when trying to solve the puzzle, because I want to feel like, okay, I at least understand the rules, and let's see what this can do to the puzzle. And as long as I feel like, okay, I know what is going to go on now, more or less, and okay, let's see what will happen, then I will gladly try any kinds of new rules I see. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Try Mav again. Nope, it does not look like we're working still. All right, we'll go to woofers instead.
Yeah,
Woofer.
I just wanted to quickly add, one thing that really appeals to me is when a rule set is kind of a variation on something that I'm previously familiar with. I think part of why variant Sudoku got so big is because everybody knows the rules of Sudoku and everyone's done it before, but then it adds this new types of deductions on top of it. And I think something that's really fun is like if I know a pencil puzzle genre that I really enjoy, like Nurikabe or something, if that genre has slightly different clues or it's combined with some other genre that I like, then I'm very quickly inclined to try to solve it.
Definitely. We'll go to Tallcat.
Yeah, on the novel rule sets front, I mean, I think if efficiency is best in that sense. I think something that is short, that is relatively easy to understand, and well, maybe not even relatively easy to understand, but something that you can like maybe read over once or twice and say, okay, I think I get how this is working. You know, I don't think any of us want to open up a puzzle that has like a Lord of the Rings worth of rules. You know, so and for me, from a setting point of view, I tend to think like those are the rules that tend to actually provide the most interest, because as you dig into them more, you figure out ways in which they interact that you might not have been able to. But just going back to something that was touched about at the start of like the getting rid of the ratings or maybe the comments instead, I think one disadvantage with that is that I don't think people are always inclined to give negative, not necessarily give negative comments, but to give sort of, if someone hasn't particularly liked a puzzle, I think they're more than likely just to not leave a comment rather than give a negative comment. And I was thinking, well, could it maybe be mandated that you have to give a comment if you want to rate a puzzle? But then I think you're more likely even to get people just saying, that's nice, or it was okay, and that's it, you know. So I think from the point of view of if a setter is wanting to get feedback, I don't know if that's necessarily the forum that I would expect it from. So, you know, for better or worse, like the ratings is on the one hand, people can indulge their worst sides of just negatively clicking. I think was it in Ratatouille where Anton Ego says, you know, the job of a critic is an easy one because you're not creating, you're just actually rating. And I think people tend to be more inclined because of the anonymity side to be negative or to be more honest in giving a negative than if they were commenting. So it then ties into what Andrew was saying about, you know, sometimes you just kind of have to put some system out there if you want it and just deal with it, whether it's good or not.
Yeah, definitely. We'll try Maverick one more time, especially since he's next up in the speakers.
Hello.
Oh, yes, I hear Maverick. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, for specifically for myself, every novel rule set, I personally think the beauty rating always jumps because in normal rule sets, for example, a killer, or you can say an arrow, the logic or you can say the deductions that have already been made are generally always known beforehand. We just don't know how to get to it. That's the reason why I personally think novel rule sets are generally much more pleasing to the eye, first of all. For example, if I see a hybrid puzzle, especially a system puzzle, then I like to think that, okay, this is a different kind of puzzle which has been mixed with Sudoku. So where can I get the directions? How beautiful can it be? There my mind is totally different because I'm not looking only for logic. I'm looking at the way it was being derived. Because, and especially I think, just like Tallcat earlier said, the name of the setter is much more important in some puzzles. For example, a Fistimofil or a KNT, even Niverio. If you hear those names, then you have a certain impression about them. Okay, I know this is the setter's name. I know they have set these type of puzzles. These type of puzzles have been introduced in the CTC. So I know that this type of puzzles, or in this type of puzzles, I can expect certain kinds of logic, certain kind of beauty in it. So I'm looking for that. And in the case, if I don't get it, then my rating will generally drop. Just as system movers have dropped, even I don't think KNT's beauty has dropped, but similar things have happened to many other setters. For me, every rule set, I would say there is saturation of logic and beauty in every process. Okay, especially in normal rule sets. That's the reason why I think that it is. I personally believe novel rule set always will get preference over a normal.
Is that the whole thing? Because that was also your speaker time.
Okay.
Do you have anything more to add in
fine,
terms
fine.
of just general? Okay, you're good.
Yeah. No. Okay. See, for me, the beauty, when you said the topic was beauty, for me, I had a quote in my mind. I don't know where I said it. It was said like something like, "Beauty is no quality in things themselves. It exists merely in the mind, and each mind perceives a different beauty." Okay. So personally, for me, there are two things to be noted. When I saw the puzzle, and I saw a ton of puzzles, okay, and especially they are not related only to a specific rule set. If I get time, I go to the LMD or in any other portals, even in CTC submissions, Sudoku submissions, and see the which puzzles have been solved or which you can see entices me to solve it. For me, first, puzzle should be aesthetically beautiful. Second, when I solve the puzzle, it should be logically beautiful also. I don't care if it has Venn bands, if it has soup. It looks very much beautiful. But if I don't find any other logic, you can say if it's a whole puzzle is full of singles, but it has been placed in an aesthetically pleasing manner. For me, that is not beauty. I personally believe that is not beauty. For me, I need some kind of at least one piece of logic which need to be, and say, much more beautiful. It does not need to be an original one. It can be something that I have personally been seeing it for multiple times. But I need some kind of, you can say, differentiator from the others. Second, we have said coloring puzzles, or like earlier someone said telegraphing. Those are all something which contribute to the beauty aspect of a puzzle. Okay, and the ratings, especially about the ratings, I personally believe that ratings are for both the setter and the solver. For the setter, it gives an indication that whether his or her puzzle has been enjoyable or not. And if it's a puzzle is, for example, a puzzle with 99% rating or 100% rating will not go. You can say not more people will solve it, but those who solve it are saying that this puzzle is much more enjoyable for me. That is the impression I get when I see a rating. And for the solver, if I go to the LMD page and I see a 99%, but the difficulty rating is less, then I know that this is a beautiful puzzle, but it will take less time. So I know I can, if I have time, let's say 30 minutes, and if I think that in 30 minutes this puzzle can be solved, that rating is useful for me. But at the same time, that rating is also negative. For example, my very first puzzle, which I still is there in the LMD portal, I have not deactivated any puzzle at all. So it is, I think, around 50 or 60% rating. And that was the first time I have tried to put a puzzle in the LMD portal. So I know that this is the benchmark. And in those that puzzle, I got a lot of comments. Most of them were negative. Some of them were encouraging. I believe if you see a rating, if you have see any rating for a puzzle and it has comments on it, then I personally believe that that puzzle is much more beautiful. Sometimes there's puzzles where beauty is given, no comments are there. Then I know that it has some kind of beauty in it, but I don't know which. So I may or may not try it. That's the thing. And for an alternative to many people, just as I said, you can have recommendations and all, but we already do have one in our LMD portal. It is called an observe number of people observed and all, and I've seen it multiple times, but I have never ever I have never seen a usefulness for that because recommendation. If I am personally seeing a puzzle and that is in the recommended in observed column, there are multiple 3 or 4 people. Then I know there is something in this puzzle which is yet to be discovered. And but I always think that do I want to be the one to discover it or not? That's the one query I always have. And for recommendation only works when people have solved it. And second, it only goes in a closed circle. If you want a puzzle to be going outside, then recommendation does not work because I know only half of people, right? If I know around in CTC Discord, if I know around 50 people, then my recommendation will only go to that 50 people. It won't go beyond that. Or for example, if it's a thumbs up or thumbs down, then I'm much more okay with that because everybody can see thumbs up or thumbs down. But again, everything has its cons and pros. So it depends on whether you really care for it or not. Personally, I don't believe ratings do matter for myself, but for each to his own, I would say.
All right. Thank you, Maverick. Those were all very insightful comments. As the chat was saying, you're laying down the law. Does anyone have any comments on some of Maverick's wonderful points? Well, I'll start by saying I had no idea that was what the observation list was for. I just put literally everything that was recommended to me in that list, so maybe I should remove those. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of good points. One thing that I was thinking about when you were talking about the subjectivity of beauty and how novel rule sets are better than other rule sets for discovering new logic and the hybrids and such, I was thinking about art in comparison to puzzles and how it's quite interesting to talk about beauty in terms of art. Like, if someone takes a painting class and everyone in the room paints the same picture, is any one of them any more beautiful than the other one? They're all painting the same picture, right? How do you talk about beauty in that sense? So if you're using the same rule set as someone else and you basically create almost the exact same puzzle, is that a more beautiful puzzle because you have a bigger name, right? Anyways, Tallcat, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting way of thinking about it. And as the discussion was going on, I was thinking that beauty can also be tied into beyond novel rule sets, just into the constraints. And that even like a beautiful killer puzzle is going to be very different from a beautiful arrow puzzle versus a beautiful anti-knight puzzle, although there are some who might argue there can be no such thing as a beautiful anti-knight puzzle. But, you know, it all just feeds back in for me of how like it's such a gray area. It really is just such a gray area that feels like we're trying to tame a complex system. And I wonder if there's just any sort of if it's just ever really feasible. I wonder if, but just seeing what was going on in the chat of like saying, oh, you know, there's maybe there should be a thing of like favorites or bookmarks or what have you. I mean, I wonder if adding just an extra thing of like one thing I like in the CTC Discord, although it's in the testing submissions, is the puzzle attempted. mark. Like if someone has attempted a puzzle and they haven't solved it, and you as a setter can go back and see, then you can always reach out to those people and say, oh, well, I've attempted it. So I think something like that in a puzzle forum, not necessarily on LMD, might be useful. I mean, if you're the setter and you're saying, okay, well, my puzzle's been solved 10 times, and you go and look and you see it's had like 80 attempts and only 10 solves, then that can be useful information, I think, as well, from the setting point of view. Just something that I wanted to add.
Yeah, we need more stats is basically all we're saying. More statistics. I like statistics. Anyways, Piatato, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a pianist, and there it's it's very common that we are a lot of people who play the same piece. Like we all want to play these Beethoven sonatas and Chopin ballades and so on, and definitely I would say that some people might be able to play certain pieces in a more beautiful manner than others, and it has to do with both the techniques, the ideas that they have in mind, and also, of course, the amount of time they put in both mastering the skills of playing the piano and practicing that piece. And I think a lot of these things can be transferred into puzzles as well. That some people just might. I mean, you get used to how to set puzzles in a way so that you get a better intuition for how to find good clues. You get maybe eventually when you get to become a better solver, you will more easily see ways to go forwards. And if you spend more time setting some puzzles, I think if you see some like really beautiful puzzles out there, some kind of really famous, big, nice puzzles, I think setters has often spent quite a considerable amount of time both figuring out like different kinds of logic they want to put into it, how to implement it in the best possible way, how to smoothen out the solve path a little bit here and there, and like I think just working hard, trying your best, going at it, being persistent, and trying to improve, that will result in beautiful puzzles, beautiful art, beautiful music, whatever you try to do. Yeah.
Thank you, Piatato. I think one thing that was interesting that Maverick brought up is that if you go through the whole solve and there's nothing that really stands out to you as being interesting or beautiful, like no one thing, then how can you really like give it a good rating or say that it's a great puzzle if there's nothing that really jumps out at you? But again, that's again subjective, right? So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? That didn't jump out at you? Okay, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like if you're solving and like nothing stood out, like really, like I feel like something's gonna stand out, you know. But maybe it doesn't, you know, and I might have the mindset of, you know, if I'm solving something and maybe I'm not seeing anything, but then all of a sudden I see something and it's like, I don't know, a pair in the row, but I just go ecstatic. I'm like, oh my god, it's a pair in a row. But like that might be just because I haven't seen anything yet, and so I'm just over embellishing something that is kind of normal. But yeah, I guess, you know, if you don't see anything nice, how can you rate it? But yeah, I don't know. I usually see something nice, so I don't have that aspect. There's always something. I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's always something. Like one's not on a 3 cell error. I don't know. Like I'm pretty. I don't need to have something super complicated for me to love it. You know, I'll see something like one's not on error, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a 9. So yeah, I don't know. It's not a concern for me, at least when I'm solving. But I do know, you know, some solvers might get like that. So I definitely agree with you, Maverick. If you really don't see anything, yeah, I mean, you really can't rate it, to be honest.
We'll go over to Tallcat. Yeah, I guess we. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just was, as Derek was talking there. So many of you know I'm a scientist in my career, and one of the things I have to do as part of that is I have to review grants and write grants to get funding as well. And one thing I was always told when it was to writing grants is that they say you have to imagine that the person who is reviewing your grants is in the worst possible situation, that they're sitting on a plane at 35,000 feet, very uncomfortable with a screaming baby next to them, and they're trying to read your grant. So you want to make it easy to read. And it did just strike me that I think one thing I always try to do when I'm rating a puzzle is I try and keep that in check. Like if I've had a long day at work and I sit down and I try and solve a puzzle and I get stuck for 15 minutes because I didn't, I did assignment and I didn't do Sudoku. It's not. I have to keep that in mind when I get to the end. I don't think it's fair for me to give that a bad rating just because I was tired and I failed to see something. Now if it's something that it's at the start that's like buried deep, then that's different. But that's just an additional something that struck me is sometimes, the beauty of a puzzle or how good a puzzle is can just as equally depend on the mood of the person when they were solving it.
Definitely, it's subjective, not just to the person, but to that person's mood. Anyways, we have to move on, unfortunately. So the Kagisho is the speaker now. So you have the floor, Kagisho.
Yes, unfortunately, I must speak now. It's interesting. Tallcat actually just stole one of my points. Not that I came into this at all prepared, but like him, I am totally winging it. But I did want to address that a solver's mood is going to affect affect how they feel about a puzzle. There are certain puzzles that I look back on very fondly, and I'm sure that they're exceptional, but I can't really cite a specific reason that I really loved those puzzles more than say another puzzle. Other than that, it's just right place, right time for me. I think music is the same way in that respect. In a lot of ways, if you're listening to a song and you're in a bad mood, it's harder to enjoy it. I mean, maybe some songs can take you out of a bad mood, but it's not always a guarantee. There are so many things that I actually have. I guess I'm a little scatterbrained, but there are so many things that have been brought up that I kind of wanted to touch on. I do think that names have a big part of what people rate for beauty, the names of the setter. Because if you're solving, say, a Fissimafel puzzle, and even if you struggled, and maybe you bifurcated through a step just because you wanted to solve a Fissimafel puzzle and there was a step that you just couldn't figure out, you might assure yourself, oh, I know there was something, I just didn't see it. And you might still rate it very nice. That's definitely something I'm quite certain people do. I mean, I'm not, calling out Fissimafel. I'm just saying that can happen for anyone. It's like if you as a solver are reasonably certain that you just didn't see something the way it was intended, then maybe you take that into account when you're rating it and you rate it higher, even though you did miss it. I also I kind of have a different mindset on all of this to some extent, because for me, I'm a very generous rater. And that's partially because I don't actually rate puzzles that I don't like, because I don't solve them. It's hard for me to. I mean, I will if I'm testing, right? I will, and in that sense, I will give constructive feedback if I can. But like, if I don't like a puzzle, I just don't solve it. And I've never totally understood. I've never totally understood the mindset. Like, it's like lately I haven't been checking LMD at all. But when I was kind of more active and like I was looking at my ratings, because it was more important to me at one point in time. And I would see a rating drop like 9% or something. it was upsetting, and it's also kind of hard to even like understand how someone can think, man, this puzzle sucks, and then keep working on it. I just don't get that. I like if someone comes in and I can tell someone rated a puzzle that I made 1 out of 5. It's like not nice at all. This also goes back to what Piatato said about the language being used in that in the rating system. Very nice. Yeah, that's very nice. It's a compliment. But for something to not be nice, nice is a fairly low bar. I mean, if we're being totally honest. So it's like when I see a puzzle like 1 out of 5, not nice at all. It's like, damn, okay. So there was nothing about this puzzle that was no redeeming qualities. That's what I take from that. So it's like I think that language is a little misleading and doesn't necessarily produce a diversity of ratings that might be healthier. Yeah, I can't. I know I had a bunch of things. I made some notes. 1 second. And I think it's important to also understand that a puzzle's beauty and how fun it is aren't necessarily the same thing either. I think that you can have puzzles. I think when you finish a puzzle, Tallcat did touch on this. When you finish a puzzle and you're like, wow, I'm surprised that puzzle existed. That was impressive. That was an impressive puzzle. It's hard to, even if you didn't necessarily love solving it, it's hard to, if a puzzle genuinely impressed you, it's not necessarily super easy to be like, well, 3 out of 5, didn't like it. Even if you were really impressed that the puzzle exists, there's a lot of factors that go into the ratings, on the solver side. I think if you may not have appreciated the puzzle's path, but you might have appreciated that it had a path at all that was even solvable, and that might even inflate your rating that you give. And I think that's actually what happens sometimes on very difficult puzzles too. Sometimes puzzles are kind of startling in that, like, man, it's like you see like a Faluda puzzle or something. It's like, I'm just stunned that this works, that this actually has a solution. And it's like, I didn't necessarily love every part of the puzzle, but man, that I'm not saying Faludas in particular, but I'm saying, puzzles that are startlingly stark. That can also inform your rating, at least for certain solvers. I'm not saying for everyone, but I just think there's a lot that goes into it. And now I'm losing my train of thought, so I guess that seems like an appropriate time to end my rant.
All right, rant ended. Thank you for your thoughts, Kogisha. That was good. Piatato, do you want to follow up because you were wanting to speak last time?
Sure. Let me see, because what I was about to say the last time was about something a little bit different though, but that's about beauty and how First of all, I really enjoy Filuta's puzzles. So if you are supposed to just talk about beauty, I think Filuta's puzzles very beautiful. You should all solve them. So yeah. And also, I think sometimes if I don't see the path forwards in some puzzle and end up having to even bifurcate and just get really frustrated and just really annoyed, I often try to just ask either the setter or someone else who solved it what actually went on or what I might have missed. And because I typically think that the fault lies on me and not the setter or the puzzle, that it might just be a bad day for solving or something. And then typically I try to be quite charitable and think, okay, it's nice. It's actually interesting logic. I just didn't spot it today. Yeah. Although, so then it wasn't a nice experience for me, but like that doesn't mean that the puzzle is not beautiful. So yeah, that's kind of what I had to say about that point.
Yeah, that actually brings up an interesting point where sometimes you'll see a step that isn't beautiful, but sometimes there's a different way to see the same deduction that is more beautiful, and some people take the time to look for those things, and some people don't really take the time to look for those things as much. And obviously that impacts your perception of the beauty of the puzzle, I suppose. Go ahead, Tallcat.
Yeah, it's just listening to Kajita there, and I know something that, and Derek is up next, I think, something he said a couple of times about how beauty can sort of correlate with difficulty, and I don't know. One of the things I'd mentioned in my setting video, and one of the things I took from when I first saw Jovi's setting video, which inspired me to start setting, is that she had said difficulty does not equal beauty. I know this isn't quite the same as what Derek was saying, but I think one trick that, and it kind of goes into a bit to what Kajita was saying about how being glad that something exists and being impressed by it, but not necessarily enjoying it if it's particularly brutal. I think that's often a trap that newer sellers tend to fall in is the notion that the more difficult a step is, then by definition it must be more beautiful. Yeah, I think Woofer, I think you're right. Like beauty correlates with difficulty might have been about beauty rating specifically. And in that same notion of how people thinking that, well, if a puzzle is harder, it must be more beautiful. I don't think that's necessarily true. So.
Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, just to clarify that, yeah, I'm definitely talking about like numbers, right? So like if you go on like LMD, right, and you look at 1 star through 5 star, and you plot, a really bad scatter plot of the percentages. I mean, it's gonna go up, right? It's going to, like, this is just factual. I don't agree with it at all, because like, I mean, I think any puzzle can be super beautiful, really. I mean, if I would go under the notion that beauty is only for difficult puzzles, I'd set difficult puzzles, and I don't. So, so I clearly I see some things in 2 to 3 star puzzles that's like, hey, this is super cool, and it's really nice. But yeah, it's like, I definitely agree with you, Tonka. It's unfortunate because like new setters, like, definitely like they'll be like, oh, I need to do this super hard puzzle, like it can't have any givens, global constraints. Well, sometimes global constraints, but like it doesn't need to have that, it really doesn't. And I think that it's being stigmatized by maybe the YouTube channel, like Cracking the Cryptics, just solving hard puzzles, and it's like, this was 100% on Logic Master Germany. And so we strive to get that, but like, well, definitely as your first puzzle, don't do that. I mean, you can try, but it's tough, and I definitely would recommend, instead of trying for a really hard puzzle and just being like, oh yeah, if this goes here, it forces, maybe just only 2 numbers, and then that breaks. And so it's gonna be beautiful, but don't try with that. Definitely try to do something that you like, rather than thinking about what the solver is going to do and be like, oh, well, the solver is going to think that this is beautiful because it's difficult. Well, that's not necessarily true. And there's also an issue that the harder it is, it might not get a rating, right? So there is a trade-off with that, right? Where you might get 7 solves or something, but it's going to be 100%, but it's not there, and so you don't know. You have no idea. So yeah, it's unfortunate that by the numbers, beauty seems to reflect difficulty, but I don't believe it in a realistic sense. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, if no one else has any comments, we'll throw it back to Derektionary. Oh, Maverick, do you want to comment before we move on to back to the same person?
Okay. See, for me, beauty correlates to difficulty. I personally think that it is somewhat of a misnomer, I would say. Holistically speaking, I think it involves a part of difficulty, but not always. And for example, if I see a two-star puzzle and the beauty rating is more than 80, I'll even say more than 85, then for me that is a huge benchmark, because the people who rate those puzzles don't tend to think of it like if we do, because basically it's a two-star puzzle, which means it's not a difficulty. There's less difficult in solving those, which means people have generally solved it within half an hour and 1 hour. So I know that this puzzle is not difficult, but whether it's beautiful or not, it depends on you. It, basically, the whole rating concept is made up of, you can say, amalgamation of other people's, you can say, perceptions. But as a setter, for me, if I'm setting a puzzle, I need to set a puzzle which is good for me, which I know I can do better. I totally agree with Derektionary that where he says that every puzzle setter should set what he likes. I personally, I have not, you can say, gone into the fog of puzzles, or you can say I personally don't like Renban a lot. But I've seen Tallcat do Renban puzzles a lot. That does that mean that I'm against Renban puzzles or against fog of puzzles? No. It's not my cup of tea. Okay, that does not mean that there is no beauty in those puzzles.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point about the subjectivity point. Andrew, would you like to follow up?
Yeah, just more about the beauty correlating to, or difficulty and beauty correlating to each other. I think one thing is that makes a puzzle memorable might be a very difficult puzzle that you finally break through with a really nice deduction. So I think difficulty can be a way to make a puzzle very memorable. And I think if somebody's really impressed by a certain deduction in the puzzle, then that can make them consider the puzzle to be more beautiful. So a lot of easy puzzles might be beautiful, but if you're not going to remember them, 3 weeks later, then is it really as beautiful as a difficult puzzle that has a really powerful deduction?
Those are some solid, good points, Andrew. Thank you. We will move on now to Derektionary, the last main speaker, and then we'll go into the panel portion where we'll take some questions from the audience. Okay, go ahead, Derektionary.
Okay, I'm setting a timer because I don't know how long 7 minutes is. So and I know it goes over or under, it's fine. But yes, I'm also winging this. I have literally no notes. But I mean, this whole stream can just be summarized as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like it's totally up to whatever you want, like if you find something beautiful, that's great. It's beautiful. So instead of trying to agree with everybody on what beauty is, I'll just kind of talk about what I think is beautiful, because everyone thinks something's different. I do want to say that with novel rule sets, I think that's really, really cool. I think it's hard to find something with like arrows or killers that's like super new, or like if you can guess something that's super new, or like different logic with arrows or killers, by all means go for it. And I think set theory kind of did that, and has since now died down into something that may not be beautiful and new anymore. So we gotta do something new now, like doublers, and we gotta do something extra. And I think that's where these new rule sets come in. So I definitely, if someone were to ask me what makes a puzzle beautiful, without even solving a puzzle or setting a puzzle, I would say new novel rule sets. I think those are very cool. And approachable novel rule sets, which can be tough. So I think something like that, where you can get, like an ease of where kind of how the new rule set works and stuff, and you can get some new interesting logic from it, but it's not super brutal, at least right away. maybe the second puzzle or the third puzzle might be. I think that's going to be, at least for me, that's gonna hit the nail on the head for me. I do also think that there is a trade-off with, if I were to solve it or not, because I might find a puzzle and I might love the rules and everything, but I just might not have time to solve it, right? Like I just recently I've been doing a binge of like 1 and 2 stars on like LMD, just because like I just can't. I don't have the time to do 3 or higher. Sometimes I can do some 3, but I don't use the search function on LMD, like look for 3-star puzzle. I just look at like the first 3 pages or first 4 pages and see whatever comes up. Maybe I should use the search function more, because there might be some cooler ones that have, maybe a specific rule that I might like or something. But yeah, I don't. I'm usually on mobile when I'm solving, so I have to type it all in the search on my phone. It's like too much. But yeah, I mean, I definitely do find puzzles beautiful that I just might not be able to solve yet. So even without seeing the solve path, I might call a puzzle beautiful or not. I know that symmetry is a big thing. People love symmetry. I think symmetry aesthetics, yeah, sure, that makes a puzzle beautiful, sure. It doesn't need to be everywhere. If it's everywhere, at least in my opinion, if it's everywhere, I find it, maybe you might have a hard place to start. Because usually something that breaks the symmetry is going to be like a mid-game kind of solve. So, you usually look for symmetry in the beginning, but if everything's symmetric, you might not know where to start. So that might be, kind of an issue if you're doing that. Another thing, let's see. Oh, the whole puzzle attempted thing that Tallcat said. Yeah, I like that a lot. I don't know how that could be implemented though, unfortunately, but I really like that, because there is survivorship bias. Rocket Zero said it. Tallcat said it too. There is survivorship bias in it that you can solve a puzzle. Well, you can try to solve a puzzle, but then you don't finish, and you can't give. I mean, you can give feedback on a comment, but you can't give feedback on a rating. So there's that issue that comes to ratings. The ratings are only from people who have solved it successfully. So I think that's something interesting that should be explored more. I think out of the ratings, I think I've given maybe a couple 3 out of 5s. I've never done a 2 or a 1. I just don't understand them, to be honest. I really don't. But I think on the ones that I've given 3s, I think in all of them, I've seen the solve path of the setter. Like the setter has like showed me the solve path. Maybe it was because I asked, or maybe they had it online somewhere, or maybe I was, looking through puzzle submission feedback or whatever, and they were explaining the solve path to another solver. So I was able to see the solve path, and in my head, maybe I'm like, really? Like that's, it's like, it's like, that's what they intended. And it's like, okay, that's pretty tough. It's like a super big chain or something, or it's something that I didn't find that I liked. If I can always find logic around it, that would make it better. And I mean, I wouldn't rate it low if I could find logic around it, but usually I wouldn't, because the solve path wants me to find this certain thing. So, but anything lower than 3, yeah, I don't know. I don't see the purpose in it besides just malice. Who hurt you? If a puzzle like not nice at all, and I think the second one's like not very nice, or like not nice or something. I don't know. It's just I don't know. I don't see the need for it. I don't see the purpose in it. It's not helping the setter. I mean, the setter isn't going to see specifically who did it, but it's going to see, a few people did it. Because the puzzle's already made. I mean, it's made. It's done. Like the setter's not going to go back and change the puzzle. They might change how they set, which is of interest. If you want to have a setter get better at solving something, then sure, give them that feedback. But otherwise, I don't see any need for it. I like the thumbs up, thumbs down motto, but it ruins the whole, no one gets to see that they have a 99% puzzle and that's super good. So you kind of lose that aspect of it if you do like a generic thumbs up, thumbs down rating system. But yeah, so I guess just to conclude, what makes the puzzle beautiful? It's really obviously it's up to you. For me, I'm a sucker for I'm a sucker for puzzles I make, so like 2 to 3 star puzzles that have like, a little bit of spice to them, some like, unique rule sets or something. Like that's my jam. I can do them just, I don't have to worry about getting stuck. Like maybe I will eventually, but like I don't have to stress over it, whereas if I see actually one of the 4-star puzzles I wanted to mention and I forgot was Zeta's double double puzzle. I think it was the one with the Z in the middle. I remember solving that, and one of the deductions was in box 7, and it was something about like minimizing, and I was like laughing when I did it because it was just so cool. Like I was just floored how it was something in box 7 and you could get like a digit, and I was doing it on my phone. I was chuckling. Like I was like, this is just phenomenal. And that's one of the outliers where it's not really a super unique rule set. I mean, it does have doublers, and double errors are kind of new. But it was 4 stars. But I'm still in love with those. If you can come up with those that have some really good solve paths. For me, it's rare. It's for I think another one was one that Rank screened. It was Tachyons and Black Holes by Heliopollux. I loved that one. I thought that one was so cool. So that one had a unique rule set and it was 4 stars, I think. So, you can have difficult puzzles being really, really cool. But I also think you don't need difficult puzzles. You can totally do 2 or 3 star puzzles and that's still beautiful. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Derek. We'll move straight into Kagisho.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I do think, the idea of the rating system being like thumbs up or thumbs down would actually probably be, on the one hand, it would probably be fine because I think that it would give people a different benchmark to judge their own puzzles by and to judge other people's puzzles by. It's like I think, it's like you people try to get to 99% or 100% because it's actually attainable. Like, you can do that. Whereas, if it became less attainable, then people they would strive for something else, just some lower number. I do think that there are problems that I think I can't remember who brought it up, that if you just switched over to a different rating system, it would disenfranchise the website's users. And to be totally honest, I think the only real way around that is to actually just have an entirely different website that has a different way to rate puzzles. Because I do think that it would be very upsetting for so much of the community, for the LMD community, if you just totally flipped the rating system on its head. And I think that people would get up in arms over something like that. But I do think people would adjust to a different rating system if I don't think, because I think you would no longer think about like, oh, I have to have 100%. It's like maybe that the benchmark would now be 90 or something. Who knows? It's hard to say, but I think that that's something the community would adjust to in that situation.
Back to Derektionary.
Yeah, so I wanted to comment on what Zeta said in the chat and what Cogito said. Because yeah, so I mean, changing the rating system on LMD, I mean, we literally took over LMD. I mean, this is so harsh to the original people that were on LMD, right? I mean, they didn't even plan for any of this stuff. And then we're just like, let's just publish everything and just publish like 20 puzzles a day or 15 puzzles a day and just screw them over. I gotta love them, but like, unfortunately, I guess we kind of had to. But there are new websites out there. I do know of some that are out there that are trying to get up, and trying to become kind of, more like a non-LMD place. And it would be nice to transition, but man, it's going to be hard though. And also changing the ratings on LMD, just take over their whole website. It will be hard though to do that too, because obviously it wasn't CTC's website. So I wanted to comment about that. Also, Zeta's thing about he said, yeah, if people went for make your puzzle as fun as possible rather than as beautiful as possible, world would be a better place. And I 100% agree. Like, don't try to make it beautiful. Just have fun. Like, who cares? Like, literally, who cares? The issue is though, it's being spread as like, I mean, we all love Simon, but Simon sometimes, not on every feature, but we'll say like, this puzzle has 100% rating on Logic Masters, 99% rating on Logic Masters. He might just say high rating on Logic Masters. And so we want to strive to that because we hear Simon saying it, and then we put one and one together and we make the deduction that they'll do puzzles that have high ratings, right? But they don't always. I mean, they've done some of mine, and it's not 100, obviously. I mean, I just know. So it's nothing. They don't always look for that, but when they do, as a new setter, you hear that and you're like, all right, well, I can't do this, right? Screw this. I can't get 100% rating. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You keep sending monthly emails. I keep sending monthly emails to them. Keep sending monthly emails to them, and one day you might get featured. But don't strive for beauty. I agree with that. Don't strive for beauty. It's unfortunate that we look at beauty rather than fun. But of course, we don't have a little button that says what's the rating of fun out of 5. Maybe if we did, that would have changed. But yeah, I just wanted to mention those few points from what Koch just said.
I want to mention something before we move on to Piatato, and we'll go into the panel part now. So we're already on Zeta's question, obviously, or Zeta's comment. I do want to mention that not just mentioning the rating on like CTC or even on other streams, but giving praise to logic that isn't honestly that beautiful, or is sort of just more like case checky logic, or not great logic that I would personally promote, like subjectively. Feels weird when it's just because of the name attached, which is something that happens very often on streams or on CTC, like a System of Value puzzle that's all anti-knight, and then maybe the ending, which is just completely anti-knight, doesn't have anything to do with, like, no control over it at all. And then Simon's like, that ending was so beautiful, but like, Fistmafel didn't intend half of those steps that just happened. That's just how anti-knight does. So, like, that's not beautiful. It just is. Anyways, moving on to Piatato. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, was I supposed to talk about this some comment now? Because I was just thinking to answer to something Derektionary said, but what was I didn't really catch the set of math. Can I just answer what I was supposed to say, what I wanted to say? Which
yeah,
was
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that fun can also be part of what is beautiful, because in the medium that is solving a puzzle, like the experience of the solved puzzle, like it all goes into what is beautiful. So if a puzzle has some really fun, maybe surprising or interesting deductions, that is beautiful. Like, fun can be beautiful, I think. Yeah. Yes. But is there a way I can see the questions we're supposed to answer? Because I don't think I may have missed it.
It was more a comment than a question, but
I should pay attention in chat.
The comment was, I think if people went for make your puzzles as fun as possible rather than as beautiful as possible, the world would be a better place. But the prisoner's dilemma is because the second is how you get on CTC, not the first.
So at least I somehow answered the question a little bit. So
yeah, good job. All right, we can move on then to Kaisha, who wants to weigh in.
Yeah, I do, and I mean I agree with Directionary and with Zeta Math. I do think that fun, if a puzzle is fun, that adds to its beauty. But I think that really the goal should be to have fun. When I'm setting puzzles, I set puzzles that are fun for me to set. That's my focus, and I think that should be kind of. I mean, I think that should be ever. I don't even necessarily. You should think that as a setter, you should be trying to set puzzles that other people will find fun. I think because you're kind of it's like you're like acting at that point. I mean, I'm not saying you should totally ignore what you think the setter is going to experience. You know, you can keep that in mind, but it should first and foremost be fun to set, and then I think the goal should be for it to be fun to solve as well. But I mean, the whole goal, this entire community is built around an activity that is meant to be fun, solving puzzles. We do it because we enjoy it. So I think that really should be the goal in every respect.
1000% agree. Go ahead, Andrew, on your take.
Yeah, so I just wanted to throw a question out there about the different types of fun that a puzzle can present. One of them being, if you can make the solver feel like he's really clever for spotting something, that can feel fun. Another one might be like on a very easy puzzle, just the fact that deductions really cascade one after the other, and so what other types of fun are there? What types of fun do people tend to prefer?
Go ahead, Tallcat.
I mean, that's a good point, and kind of tying this all in together, I was just wondering if maybe not as an addendum to a beauty rating or something, or again, not talking per se about LMD, but I think a lot of the things we've touched on is like, did you enjoy solving the puzzle? Would you recommend it to others? I think those are two kind of benchmarks that could be like an addendum that, if you wanted to get rid of a beauty rating altogether in a website, then that might be something that as an alternative, as like a thumbs up or thumbs down. Did you enjoy it? Would you recommend it? In terms of like types of fun, I mean, again, I think that it is very, very subjective. Like, as I said, I tend not to go for like the longer solves, but I remember, and it kind of refers back to something you had said earlier, Andrew. I had solved, I had deliberately set aside like 3 or 4 hours, and I decided I was going to try and solve Genome by Turganis, and he had set that deliberately to set a puzzle as brutal as possible, and I knew eyes open going in that it was going to be that, and it was really, really hard. It was like small step after small step after small step after small step, but it held my interest, and it's like, for me, sometimes that's kind of the hallmark of a good puzzle. We've heard Simon say this, like for him, one of the hallmarks of a good puzzle is if you're solving it and you look up and an hour and a half has gone by and you're like, what the hell? And because you've just been hooked, you're interested and you're in the puzzle. And I remember with Genome, and I don't know if Naverio is still on, but I know he like really, really hates that puzzle. But there was a point in it where I had kind of worked on it for 3 hours, and I was like, I'm just going to go. And I was lying in my bed, and I had the grid in my head, and it just suddenly something clicked in my head, and I like rushed downstairs. 20 minutes, the puzzle was done, and it was that big breakthrough moment. And I was like, for going in, setting a brutally hard puzzle, I mean, he did a good. I think that's a fantastic puzzle. But I would absolutely, and I did enjoy solving it because it hooked my interest. But I would absolutely not necessarily recommend it for the faint of heart. So let's just. So I think in terms of an additional thing of what makes a good puzzle is, yeah, if it hooks you in, like, and it can be an easy puzzle and it can be a moderate puzzle or a hard puzzle, but if you're hooked, then that's usually a sign of a good puzzle for me.
All right, moving back to Cardesia.
Yeah, I guess a couple things. I think that what Tallcat just said kind of ties back to what has already been discussed about your mood kind of impacting your experience of a puzzle. I mean, I had a puzzle, one of Andrew's, Strange Loop. I love Strange Loop, but I love Strange Loop, but I had attempted before I solved Strange Loop. I had attempted it months before, and I really didn't like it. I'm just being totally honest. I attempted it, failed, really didn't like the puzzle. But then I saw Riff Clown saying it was like his favorite 5-star puzzle. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give this another try. I'll try it again. And I tried it again, and I loved it. And it's just it's just kind of was, I guess, reinforcement for me, just like how much just your mental state can sometimes affect how much you like or didn't like a puzzle. But also there's definitely, so like in terms of different ways people can enjoy puzzles, that's just going to depend on the solver. That's totally going to depend, which is why I said that I think as a setter, it's really healthier to focus on setting puzzles that you find fun, is because you cannot set a puzzle that everyone will think is fun. Some people think easy puzzles are fun. Some people think really hard puzzles are really fun. Like, some people really love that kind of challenge. So I really think you have to be a little bit self-absorbed in how you approach setting in that way, because you cannot please everyone. It's just not even, it's not possible. Yeah, that's all.
Let's go to another question. Sorry, Derek. Let's go to another question from, I think it was Sergey or Serge maybe. But I can't find it in the chat, so I can't pin it. But he suggested tags instead of ratings, and we didn't really touch on that or discuss it. But like tags of like smooth solve, or like no, I'm blanking on like what he suggested. But what would you guys think of some kind of tagging system rather than a beauty system or rating? Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I remember that going in the chat. I don't know. Because I don't know, there'd be too many tags, right? I mean, there'd be like, yeah, I think one of them was like, one of the tags that they put was like, lots of pencil marking, or lots of arithmetic, or yeah, I mean, I forget the other examples that you guys had. But I don't know. I feel like that'd be too much. That'd be too many tags. And then what? Okay, so you could search based on a tag. So you could search based on like arithmetic or something, or you could search based on coloring. Well, yeah. Well, LMD has a coloring thing, I think. But yeah. So you could search based on tags. Yeah, I don't know. In my opinion, I just think it would be too much. Yeah. I think it will be too much. I think doing actually, Tallcat mentioned, did you like the puzzle? Would you recommend it? I think those are great questions to be added. I mean, those can definitely, because I can like puzzles but not want to have them be recommended. Like 100%, definitely. Most of them probably. Because I would only recommend ones that I really, really, really liked. But yeah, I feel like tags might be a bit too many. Yeah, I don't know if okay. Oh yeah, scan heavy, good aesthetics, very hard original logic, new rule set. Okay, yeah. So yeah, like scan heavy. Yeah, okay. Good aesthetics, very hard, original logic. I mean, I like them, but if they're going to be tags, you're making them tags for a reason, and I'm assuming that the reason is because you want to use them as a search function. But then at that point, I don't know of many people that would search scan heavy. Maybe people would. Maybe people like scanning heavy. I mean, I'm actually pretty okay with heavy scanning. But yeah. I'm ranting now. That's my 2 cents on tags. I don't know if it'd be super good, but I do like the idea. I mean, good for letters. Yeah. I mean, I like the idea, but with tags, I think it would end up being too many. That's what I'll say.
I should mention just what I thought of right now, whereas there's a place where I know that tags are used quite effectively, and that's rate my prof. And I'm sure Tallcat knows all about the spicy tag for rate my prof. And yeah, it's very useful, of course. So go ahead, Tallcat, talk about that, I guess.
Actually, I don't, because at the minute I don't do much teaching, although that's about to change this semester, for better or for worse for the students. But no, it's funny, MicroStudy actually had pointed this out, is that I think one place that works quite well in terms of tags is in the Discord, is the CTC Discord archive, like the emojis. I mean, I don't think, I think any kind of system like that, you have to be very careful in what you use. I think, putting something like scan heavy or lots of this or lots of that, I don't think that's good, because like Derek says, like, he has no issue with scanning. I mean, heavy pencil marking, people have different styles of solving. Like, I don't pencil mark heavy, so I don't think that's necessarily good. But in like the archive, where they have the mind-blowing logic, good theme, things like that, I think anything like that would be helpful. It's tricky though, because I mean, if you add more information, then if you add more steps, then you kind of might put up people not wanting to do it. And if you take less steps away, then you kind of lose something there. It's a tricky balance. Again, I think the other thing in some of this all ties back to what we said before, of like, you could have and again, not wanting to pick on him, but I think is a name who comes to mind. Like, you can have a Fistemel puzzle, and a lot of people might, if there was a tag for like mind-blowing logic, a lot of people might just automatically click mind-blow. Fistemel, mind-blowing logic, Fistemel, mind-blowing logic. Partly because of I guess the mystique and perception that he has. So, I don't know. I like the idea of kind of some emojis or something like that as a thing, but then you might end up with just the same situation where people just automatically click. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. Thank you for your 2 cents. Maverick, what are your thoughts?
I personally don't like this tag system because we have too much tags, as he has said, and too much thing which Tallcat has already touched upon will look like a survey. Okay, at first we have to have a set of tags. Then we have to, everyone who is solving the puzzle will have to keep in mind whether these tags are valuable or not. Because I personally like Tallcat, I don't pencil mark heavily. So I generally won't even consider pencil marking as a tag, or even coloring for that matter. So if I miss on those two tags, does that mean that that puzzle does not have a pencil marking, or does it also mean that it does not have a coloring? No, those are different approaches. So tags generally, and if you can say too many tags will not be useful also, and too less will also not be useful. It's the same thing. We are facing the same conundrum. So I don't personally think that it will help much. That's my 2 cents.
All right. Thank you for your 2 cents. I'm gaining quite a bit of money this time. Piatato, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel like tags it's just kind of a not very personal, simplified version of a comment, so, kind of. So I think it's just yeah, it's just nicer if more people just would like to comment on things, and I was thinking as well that we have been complaining a lot today about different aspects with ratings on LMD and so on, but it would be really nice, I think, if on the Discord archive that have a lot of tags or emojis, if it could instead have a thread where you can discuss the puzzle, because I think that's why so many people just jump into LMD and post puzzles there, because it's a community where you get comments directly on your puzzle page, and it's just so nice to get comments. Comments is the way to go. Yeah, it's the most fun and most helpful and nicest thing.
All right. Does anyone in chat have a question or topic they'd like to raise? I have a few more Zegres ones, but I didn't realize that was Zegres. What is the most effective rating system? I guess Playmaker is asking. Oh yes, I should mention, I did notice that on my phone. Thank you to David Ratner for donating to the channel. Yeah, thanks a lot, David. That's awesome. I think he had a message too, so I'll read that while we're waiting. And if anyone in the group also has a thing they would like to discuss more, David says, for bringing together amazing panel and talking about beauty, absolutely fascinating. Need more of it in the world. Thank you, David. I agree. We need more beauty and discussion of it, especially relating to puzzles in the world. Well, coming back to something that we were talking about right at the beginning, and we haven't talked about that much, Piatato and a few other people have mentioned that sort of setting meta puzzles when you're setting, or challenges for yourself, like given lists, etc., could make a puzzle more beautiful in that sort of way. What do we think about that? What are people's thoughts on that? Derek?
Yeah, sure, go for it. I mean, yeah, why not? Like, if you set a benchmark, like, hey, I want to set just arrows or something, or just arrows and one black dot for Zeta, or I just want to set Kropke pairs or something. Like, yeah, I think that's good. I think it helps you grow as a setter. Like, for Secret Santa, I branched out a lot, and I did a parody party puzzle with a loop, and it was the first loop puzzle I've ever done, like draw a loop in the grid, because I want to start doing hybrid puzzles. I want to start making snakes or something in my grid, or loops, or I don't know, but I don't know too many pencil puzzles. I mean, I know, like, Nurikabe, Yajalin, like, I don't know, like, how they work with Sudoku, so I need to figure that out first. But I think I'll definitely do some type of challenge to myself with that, that says, make an aquarium puzzle or something. And obviously it's going to be 2 stars because I don't know anything about the logic, so I'm going to make it pretty easy. But I think yeah, I mean, I think, or like I said, just making one about arrows, or just killer, like a pure killer. 2 to 10th is like super good at that stuff. He even has some ones that are like 159 plus an extra constraint. Like, I think those are super cool, and he's definitely forcing himself to do that, right? I mean, and to come up with cool logic, and kudos to him for that. I think that's great. So I definitely think it would make puzzles. I don't know if it'll make puzzles more beautiful. I mean, yeah, it would, because you're trying to put in nice logic with those rule sets. So you're trying to come up with new logical steps that maybe you've never seen before. So yeah, I do agree that I think it would make a puzzle more beautiful if you challenge yourself, because by challenging yourself, you're forcing yourself to come up with logic that maybe you're not used to setting with. So yeah, I think that's a really neat idea, and I encourage many setters, all setters, to try that out.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something beautiful about seeing someone's fresh take on a genre or variant or whatever. Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I was just going to mention that I have set a few puzzles just kind of to along the lines of it'd be neat if something like this existed, or can this exist, and not even trying to worry about making them beautiful or fun. Just an example is in chat we're joking around about you know, rule sets that would be terrible, like what if every 3x3 box in the grid was had to have a determinant that was equal to its box number or something like that. And so after thinking about it, you're just tempted to make a puzzle out of it, just to say, hey, look, this can exist. So I wasn't able to make a puzzle with where every box number was the determinant of the box. That turned out to be impossible, but I did find one where every box had its own determinant that was a digit from 1 to 9. So I could put a little circle in there and say, okay, whatever digit goes in this circle is going to be the determinant of this box. And I wasn't expecting anybody actually even to try to solve it. I just kind of set it to kind of show that it can exist. A couple of people did solve it. I think Gurkles and Rocky Rower. But sometimes you just want to play around and just see what's possible. Just kind of challenge yourself to set something insane, but you're not exactly going to expect people to like the puzzle. So I'm not going to publish puzzles like that on LMD, of course. But I just think it's interesting sometimes to challenge yourself as a setter to see what kind of crazy stuff you can come up with.
Definitely, that is crazy. All right, Kagisha, what are your thoughts on this?
As I'm sure people who, well, I'm guessing you know this meme, but like this is how I set a lot of puzzles. Is I will think of some seemingly very silly or ridiculous idea, and I will just see what I can do with it. And sometimes I don't really come up with anything that's really all that good, and sometimes I come up with stuff and I'm like, wow, that's actually really cool. And those are the ones that I really go with and try to expand on and end up publishing and stuff. I think that doing things like that helps at least for me, it helps keep things fresh, I guess. Logically, it's like if I think of some idea that I'm like, man, I wonder if a puzzle built around this idea is even possible. And then I sit there and I'll like ruminate on it and think on it and come up with some ideas. And usually those ideas are very unique to that puzzle, and aren't really, they don't feel derivative, I guess. And I personally take enjoyment from that. So that's something that I personally do a lot, is challenge myself with silly things. Like, I mean, the Santa puzzle that I set for Doom Diat is like a yin yang killer, then like cage crop geese thing, because those are all things that he said he liked. And I mean, none of those things were things that I had any experience with or really would have ever set on my own. Most likely, maybe a yin yang eventually, but and it was really fun. I liked setting it, and people seem to have liked solving it. So I don't know. You can get a lot of diversity doing that kind of stuff.
Definitely. Woofers has a point as well, which he says we'll probably change the topic, but that's okay. Go ahead, Woofers.
Yeah, it's definitely a subject change. One thing I was hoping we could talk about is some specific puzzles and what makes them beautiful. So I was going to ask you all, like, what's your favorite or one of your favorite puzzles from the last month or two? Well, that you've solved in the last month or two, and what makes it beautiful. So I guess for me, one puzzle that stood out, Magnus Josephson made the chaos deconstruction and Philomeno hybrid puzzle. And one thing about hybrids that always appeals to me is when you kind of bounce back and forth between two different types of logic. And in that puzzle, you do a lot of that, where there's some Sudoku deduction and then some Philomeno deduction. You go back and forth the entire time. And then there's also like global deductions about the rule set. So it's like definitely in this wheelhouse of the type of logic that I enjoy, and it's super fun.
Yeah, that's a fun idea. We're sort of winding down, so maybe that can be the last activity, as everyone can say a puzzle and what's beautiful about it. So let's go Derektionary.
I pulled up my solved puzzles from over the course of last month, but well, two stood out. So, but I'll say, I'll say Disconnection by Fritz Dis. Fritz Dis, I think sent me it and asked to test it or something. And I think so. Yeah, I mean, people send me stuff usually, and I'll usually test it. I loved it. I thought it was so cool. It was featured by Simon, so I was trying to hopefully get one that wasn't featured yet. But yeah, Fritz Disconnection. I really liked it. It had a unique grid. I guess in that case, that was the novel rule set, where the disjoint. I had a disjoint rule set, but for example, all of the 9 cells in the top left, there 3 of them weren't like over the same column. So row 1, column 1 could help box 4 in the disjoint, when usually it wouldn't help box 4, because row 1, column 1 would see down the first column and would eliminate row 4, column 1 immediately. But because it was offset, it would not eliminate that immediately. So I really like that. I guess tachyons and black holes, the one that I mentioned. I think Rank solved it. I really enjoyed that one as well. 2 to 10ths. 2 to 10ths. I solved December 28th. So exactly 1 month ago. Happy Birthday Naverio one. I like that one too. That one was hard. But it was really neat. I think it was just killers, and had some really neat logic to it. So yeah. So unfortunately, all of the 3 that I said that I really liked were all 4 or 5 stars. But just know that 2 and 3 stars are totally okay. They can totally be beautiful. But which was supposed to be my whole motto this whole time. Yeah, exactly. So my bad. Those puzzles were really good in my opinion.
Thank you, Derek, for those suggestions. Andrew?
Yeah, so one of the puzzles that really stood out to me recently that I really enjoyed was Kajito's puzzle for Tristan's birthday, the 40 corners. And I had the pleasure of testing that before Tristan streamed it. So I really enjoyed that. It's a very beautiful grid layout, and it's kind of just amazing how the rule set leads to a unique solution with that grid. So if you haven't tried that one or seen it on stream, I'd recommend giving it a go. And then I think it got featured on CTC as well shortly after that.
Yeah, great suggestion. Tallcat?
Yeah, I mean, there are 2 particularly stand out. Actually, one of them is I solved a couple of days ago. I'm just looking at my solve list on LMD. And actually, I believe is today's CTC feature. with Simon. It's a standard killer. It was called Lattice. It's by Pie Guy, and it was just a really, I mean, the reason I liked it is I looked at it and I was like, I think I can see where this is going, and then just had to tweak my brain slightly and tweak my thinking. But it was just a really, really nicely constructed grid, and the logic was, it's one of the things I like to do is like riffing on logic. So there was a lot of riffing logic throughout, which I think made it nicer, more approachable. But it was just a really, really well put together puzzle. And I enjoyed it immensely solving it. And then another was, and it's one of the few that I've recommended to CTC, was 2 to 10th region sum region sums, the doubler region sum lines puzzle that I think was featured. And again, I just thought that was, it was something that was not, it was kind of clear where you had to start, but it wasn't, you still had to give some thought. But again, it was just really, really well constructed and put together, and a nice tight solve path. And I felt very linear, although I think if you watch Simon's solve of it, he kind of misses some of the linear points. But, there you go. But those, I just enjoyed them immensely. I think that's kind of what I consider as beautiful. They were very well constructed. They were very well put together. And it was a nice solve path. And I just had a smile as I was solving them. So.
Thank you, Tallcat. Kagisha?
Yeah, this might seem kind of random, I guess, but there was actually a puzzle I really liked by one of Zeta Math students. I think his name was Buzz, I want to say, or something. It was a product arrows 6x6. I really liked that puzzle. I don't know. There's something very refreshing about I don't know. For me, there's always something more refreshing. Not to say I went in assuming that whoever Fuzz is, wasn't a good setter. It's always something refreshing. You don't have any expectations from someone who's just learning how to set, and when your expectations are so exceeded, for me, that always feels nice. And like, I thought that puzzle was really good, and it's just, probably it was just made as an exercise, I guess, for Zeta's class. But I really liked that puzzle. There was also a puzzle I recently tested for Andrew, actually, that I really liked. I would say, and then another one was a puzzle that Grockles made for me for Christmas. I loved that puzzle. I mean, it was right up my alley. Yeah, those come to mind as standing out in the last couple months. And I haven't been as active solving, though, so I feel like a little less qualified to answer this than maybe some people.
Piatato or Maverick, do you have any puzzles that come to mind?
Both of us, or one?
Either of you.
I mean, certainly I have a couple, and I think my most favorite puzzle that I've solved last month is a Wichtel puzzle from 2 years ago, Die Mutierte Sieben, which is just an insane puzzle, which is a combination of coral, which is almost like a cave, but kind of inverted, and Japanese sums and skyscrapers, and all the clues are ciphered, and all the clues are knapp daneben, so it's wrong by one. And then also it's written penguin, like the username pin7gwin outside the grid. I don't know if it's the setter or if it's the guy who got the puzzle as a gift, but in any case, it's just a marvelous puzzle. It's just so much interesting logic. And then the sevens have some special rule. They are it's just really complicated, but it's such a nice puzzle. It's just such a joy to solve it, and so interesting. And also, as an honorary mention, Filuta's double Philomeno, also really very charming and funny puzzle. It looks like it's going to be really horribly difficult and very annoying, but it's not. It's really, really charming. Yeah, that's my favorites.
Cool. Maverick, do you have any?
Recently, to be honest, for the last month, haven't been solving much Sudoku at all. So I think the third most favorite one was in a contest, especially the Sudoku marbles contest, which happened recently. I think it was by Just for Kids in Discord, and whose original name is Arun. So he made a diagonal and odd even 9 by 9, which for a contest on a contest level was a puzzle which I did not expect to have that much logic into it. And the second and first one is both by reference. I recently saw Rosette, which I personally liked, especially with the clock and all the thermal, the placing of thermal. And the first one was Neighbor Sudoku. It involved the placing of 6 7, the pair 6 7. And for me, that puzzle had, you can say, much more beautiful logic than the rest of them, because I went into the mindset of thinking, how am I going to put the 6 7? Because among the whole outside grid, there are digits, pairs of digits given. And the only common thing was 6 7. So I was thinking of how to place it, but I could not, was not able to solve. That's the very first puzzle I did not solve it. And so I went home. For 3 days, I did not solve any puzzles, just thought about how to solve it, how to solve it. Even my work also, I was thinking what was there in my mind, because something in that puzzle interested me vaguely enough that I wanted to try it every time I got. And after 3 days, I finally figured out the logic, and it was so much beautiful.
Cool. I don't have any puzzle recommendations because I haven't been doing a lot of solving, but that brings us to, I think, the conclusion. So we've been doing the afterwards panel discussion for about 40 minutes now, so we will wrap it up. Does anyone have any final thoughts before we head out and wrap it up for today? Tallcat, do you want to go ahead?
Just to thank you for putting this together, to thank everyone else for being here, and to thank all the chat for being very active and engaging. And I thought this format was good.
Yeah, thanks to, I believe it was MNasty 3 or 2 that suggested this format, a panel format for the setting discussions. I could be wrong on that, but it was definitely one of my patrons. Thank you to my patrons for giving me some feedback also. That was part of that. So credit to him for that. And thanks for everyone for being so good with the format. The speakers were awesome in terms of following the rules and all that. And the chat was engaged as well. So yeah, thank you to everyone. And I hope you got a lot from this discussion. There was definitely a lot of things to think about. So yeah, we're done. Like the stream, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, everyone. Have a good rest of your weekend, guys.